minutes of technical difficulties that sounded like this.
African Americans face in this country and other minorities. He doesn't get it.
The term 90s, I'm like, it's like a trigger.
BLM is basically insolvent, possibly going to file for bankruptcy. Ron Desantis had a little bit of a rocky rollout yesterday. Behar shows her racism again on The View, and public restrooms. Should they be available to everyone? All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
USA headquarters in the old Charlie Kirk Show studios. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Thursday, May 25th, the year of our Lord 2023. On this day, interestingly enough, a lot of stuff happening. I don't know if the news necessarily coincides by coincidence or on purpose, but I think today is the 3-year anniversary of the George Floyd murder. And I say murder. I know a lot of people have some opinions on that, but Chauvin was convicted of murder. Obviously, there's appeals going on there. But as of right now, legally speaking, that's what it is. But we're 3 years out from that. And interestingly enough, news stories have also been coming out about the BLM fraud that it masquerades as a nonprofit. I think this is fascinating. I have no idea why this story isn't getting a lot more attention. You may have already seen this, but just to hit you with a couple of headlines here. Black Lives Matter, the nonprofit organization, according to the Post Millennial, might risk bankruptcy after $8.5 million in deficit last year, financial disclosures indicate. Do you remember about this time last year when Patrisse Cullors, the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter nonprofit, resigned as the executive director? Well, she resigned because of the financial troubles, not because they weren't making enough money, because they were making a ton of money, but because she was spending that money irresponsibly on herself and spent, $5 million something on mansions. But if you remember, right before she resigned, or right after, at the time she resigned, she went on to a show, a podcast thing that I wanted to pull the clip of, talking about 990s. 990s, if you don't know, are the IRS form that shows where the monies in nonprofits went. This is her, again, about a year ago, talking about how those forms are triggering and racist. I don't know if she actually said racist, but saying that, well, I don't know what those are. While also running a nonprofit that brought in, I think, $70 million a year before. I think we already talked about the other day that their funding has gone down about 88%, from $70 million to around 5, I think. I have to double check what they actually brought in. But now more news is making the rounds about what those finances actually look like. So before we talk about the Black Lives Matter nonprofit, I want to play this clip of Patrisse Cullors talking about how the forms that you have to file if you are a nonprofit are triggering to her. Watch this clip from about a year ago. Check it out.
The new standards.
That's exactly right. It's a really good question. I think, first of all, number one, I actually did not know what 990s were before all of this happened.
It's confusing.
So part of the opportunity here is to educate our
Yes.
folks. Like, something's being weaponized against us that many people don't even know and honestly don't care about.
I didn't know about them until they started asking us for them for COVID relief funds. I said, you need my 990. I had to call the accountant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the accountant handled that. Like, I don't know what that is. It is such a trip now to hear the word, the term 990s. I'm like, it's like triggering.
April 15th is next week.
But
okay, so this is in April of last year. 990s are triggering. This is from the Post Millennial, talking about the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which is the global parent of all Black Lives Matter. They ran about an $8.5 million deficit while they continued to give out seven-figure salaries and contracts to relatives of the founder, Patrisse Cullors. According to the organization, I'm reading from the Post Millennial, by the way. According to the organization's 2022 tax returns, one of the family members was Paul Cullors, Patrice's brother, who was paid a $126,000 salary as the head of security. The bodyguard, with no previous experience, made a total of, you're going to lose your mind here, $1.6 million between him and his two security companies, which again, he had no experience in prior to his sister starting a nonprofit that raised $100 million and profited greatly from. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Fund only raised $9.3 million in 2022, down $77 million, down from $77 million in 2021 and $90 million in 2022. Patrisse Cullors, I thought it was Colors. This says Color. No, it is Colors. Typo here, Post Millennial. Maybe you should check stuff. This is coming from me who misspells things all the time. Patrisse Cullors resigned as the executive director in May 2021 after the public learned that she spent, hold your horses, you ready for this? $3.2 million on 4 separate homes and other lavish expenses. Prior to her resignation, she was accused of funneling $238,000 to a company that belonged to the father of her child. It goes on to talk about all of the different people that earned tons of millions of dollars. This guy named Shalomia Howard, not sure who this is, but a former board member, earned about $1.7 million in consulting services. And is accused of diverting a bunch of funds, which is embezzlement. In a lawsuit in September, it was announced that he stole about $10 million in donations used for his personal piggy bank. So the bottom line here is, here's the question. John asks, why isn't that BLM lady in prison? I'm not sure, but if I were to place a bet, I would probably bet that she does end up in prison at some point for massive fraud. Now, it is difficult because nonprofits are allowed to operate in whatever way they see fit. Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum founder and president of that nonprofit, makes $1 million a year or something like that. So you're allowed to do that. That's that's what it is. That's how that whole system works. Having said that, it is interesting / fascinating that companies still continue to donate money to the clearly, I don't want to say for-profit because it really isn't that. It's the lavish lifestyles of about 3 to 4 to 5 major people. Now, there's some people in the comment section pointing out the fact that the actual Black Lives Matter on the ground people that probably actually cared about Black lives didn't get any of that money. They saw absolutely none of it. The $90 million raised in 2020, $77 million raised in 2021, down to like $9 million this past year. I am very curious to see what they end up bringing in 2023. I would imagine it's going to be substantially lower. Let me see. Oh, this is actually fascinating. This I believe is a dissenter here. James says police officers killing blacks every single day and get away with it. Black Lives Matter was created for a serious reason. First of all, the first part of your statement is horribly inaccurate, and honest to God, that is one of the problems. What is it? Ronald Reagan said this. It's not that our lefty friends are dumb. I don't think people who think this is dumb. It's just that so much of what they know isn't so. I'll keep in mind that the statistic is that more police officers are killed, and I hate categorizing things by race, but more police officers are killed by black people every year than black people are killed by police officers. And then when you go into the quote unquote unarmed, then you get that really really that statistic shrinks a lot. I also heard something the other day that I feel like is an important argument to be made, that I don't know is made well enough or often enough. Um, but if you get in a fight with a police officer, um, and so if a person gets in a fight with a police officer and that person is quote unquote unarmed and can be listed as such if something bad happens, remember, if you're fighting a police officer who has a weapon, the fight is now over the weapon, right? If you're fighting a police officer and the police officer has a gun, the fight is now for the gun. In other words, does the unarmed component in that situation makes much sense? I don't think it does. Um, wow, a lot of people giving whatever that guy's name was some grief here in the comment section for saying something that ridiculous. But anyways, BLM is suffering greatly, as they probably should. You know, it is kind of interesting. There are people who I think genuinely, out of what they believed was the goodness of their own heart, gave money to that organization. And to know that it was all effectively stolen to enrich the lives of the people who effectively are now grifters is sad. I know a lot of people might not have a ton of sympathy for the people that donated to BLM. The companies, the big Fortune 500 companies that gave them millions of dollars, yeah, that's they were just hopping on the trend. But the actual decent, good-hearted people that did give their hard-earned money to these people, it's just sad to see how much of it was wasted and didn't actually go towards any of the mission statements that they probably set out to have. So that is what it is. We will see what happens. We'll keep you updated if anything else happens. But again, Black Lives Matter at risk of bankruptcy after running an $8.5 million deficit in 2022 as their donations had tanked. Let's see. All right, I'm going to move on to this because this is getting a lot of attention, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why haven't we talked about this first? One, because I think the Black Lives Matter thing is more interesting. Basically, Ron DeSantis' launch yesterday was rocky. Now, I say that knowing that that's not necessarily a bad thing in the modern age. And this is where I struggle because I don't know if what I'm thinking here is particularly for partisan reasons, in that, like, I like Ron DeSantis, and I don't know, I don't like seeing fair mistreatment, or if I'm looking at this objectively, this is what I actually think. So if you weren't hip to that, Ron DeSantis's Twitter Space campaign launch did not go well, technically speaking, from the onset. I'm going to give you a video here. I forget this guy's name. This dude on MSNBC. Yeah, his name is flitting out of my head. It's not. Well, you'll see the guy. MSNBC had a field day with the technical errors, and this is how they were reporting all of this stuff. I want you to watch this, and then we'll discuss on the other side of why, yes, technologically, it was a bad. It didn't work. But I don't think that was a bad thing necessarily. Watch this.
Do you remember that time that billionaire Elon Musk unveiled the new Tesla Cybertruck? And when he went to demonstrate the vehicle's supposedly bulletproof glass, they smashed two of its windows, even though they weren't supposed to break? Today's Twitter rollout of the Ron DeSantis campaign went kind of like that.
Now it's quiet. We want to welcome you to this historic Twitter Spaces event, and more broadly, a first in the history of social media. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce two individuals who've done more to loosen the. Sorry about that. We've got so many people here.
So let's see.
It's like they just keep crashing, huh?
Well, it's certainly an incredible honor to have Governor DeSantis make this stark announcement.
Yo, it was like 20 minutes of that. Trump had the golden escalator. Ron DeSantis got the world's most embarrassing 404 error. Over 20 minutes of technical difficulties that sounded like this. That is how the Florida governor's big entrance in the Republican presidential primary will be forever remembered. DeSantis chose to launch his campaign not during a campaign rally, not on a televised event, but on Twitter.com with Elon Musk. And why? Maybe because Musk and Twitter are the best audience for the DeSantis brand crusade against woke.
Yeah. Looks like the Wi-Fi is going out a little bit, so sorry if this ends up being a little bit choppy. So that was that. Did they categorize it correct? Yes. It was not good. It was about 20 minutes of just crazy nonsense. And then they still couldn't figure out how to get the thing online. And then ultimately they had to move over off of Elon Musk's Twitter account to the other guy hosting, which I think quite a few people less ended up tuning into that. So technically speaking, it was not great. Where I disagree with a lot of the MSNBC people is that I don't think that matters. In the modern age of new stuff rolling out, there was a comment here. Barbara says, tech problems were not DeSantis's fault. I think everybody also agree, like, that's what I thought. Like, this isn't his fault. So, one, we already knew that he was running for president. It wasn't like this announcement was like this, oh no, like, how? What? Ron DeSantis is running for president? No, everybody knew Ron DeSantis was running for president. Two, for the most part, we know his platform, policy-wise, issues-wise. Everybody already knows what he stands for. And three, regardless of how the actual technical rollout was, I think people understand that technical difficulties happen, and that's Elon's fault, not Ron DeSantis. I think the last thing is, the video that we just watched was talking about, well, Elon Musk's Cybertruck rollout, how they broke windows and it was terrible and it was a big craziness. I think the poor rollout of the Tesla Cybertruck and the windows that accidentally broke. Look, in terms of publicity, the windows that broke on the Tesla Cybertruck can be fixed. That issue can be solved pretty easily, especially in the manufacturing phase of Tesla Cybertrucks. The PR that they got for that is unrecreatable. In other words, I think, and I still kind of believe this, I think the Tesla windows breaking on the Cybertruck, if you don't know what that is, look it up. I think that was a better PR move than the windows actually holding up to the rock being smashed against it. In other words, as it relates to Ron DeSantis, I don't think this damaged him at all. And I actually do think he got more earned media because of it. That was one MSNBC show. I'm going to show you another MSNBC show, which is Joy Reid's show, which, again, I know you probably don't watch, but at the end of the day, publicity means people talking about you. And if that's the goal, to get earned media and to get people talking about you, I don't know how you can call it a failure. Again, technically, it was a huge failure. Technically, like, from a technological standpoint, from a technological standpoint, yeah, it didn't work. But I don't think that was a bad thing. But watch this. He was on NBC more than he would have been. Also, by the way, these guys are all the same people that were freaking out that, is Ron DeSantis colluding with a tech company? Yeah, kind of like how Zuckerberg and Facebook had Obama on to do all that stuff was dumb. But watch this from Joy Reid's show, and it's just interesting.
Ron DeSantis is trying to do, and probably why he was like, oh, I'll launch it on Twitter Spaces, is to prove that, like, he's young and Biden is, like, old. But Biden literally trolled the heck out of him right into the middle of their glitch. Like, Dark Brandon gave him the business on Twitter. This is humiliating.
This is beyond humiliating, and it was so predictable. First of all, we've been saying that he's failed to launch, so it reminds me actually of the movie Failure to Launch. And this is so indicative of who he is. We know that he doesn't have the personality to be president of the United States.
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to get that last line in there because I thought it was interesting. So again, Joy Reid and her little group of people on there, laughing at it, which again, it is kind of funny. I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, again, I don't think it's as a failure to launch. Well, he's got $150 million in his presidential campaign war chest. Everybody knows about it now. So in what way is that a quote unquote failure? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like that big of a failure if you're talking about publicity being the big driver. Also, I'm trying to use a new term. I think twit turns. So like Twitter interns. And those are the people that tweet for other people. One of the things that I think is fascinating about Twitter, if you're on Twitter, is that all of the bigwig celebrity people, and by that I mean like politicians. Joe Biden does not run his own Twitter, so Joy Reid saying Joe Biden got him, like Joe Biden was probably asleep when that was happening. So yeah, his intern, the twit turns, tweeted for him. Same thing with Gavin Newsom. Same thing with so many of these elected officials. They don't actually use Twitter to tweet about things. So get out of here with that crap. And then lastly, the last line here. Let me play that one more time. What she said.
So indicative of who he is. We know that he doesn't have the personality to be president of the United States.
I don't know what that means. Why personality type has anything to do with it? My perfect president of the United States is the awkward, neurotic guy that sits alone in a room and makes good decisions. So, I've never understood the personality. Like, why do you have to? Anyways, some people look at the world differently, so there's that. All right, moving on. Yeah, bottom line here, I don't think DeSantis lost anything by that whole thing. Moving on. Racist lady still is on network TV somehow. Joy Behar said something. I think one of them, and I hate using hyperbole, but they keep upping the ante here. Every time I think this is the worst thing that's ever been said on network TV, it keeps getting more and more advanced. Joy Behar was talking about Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott, who happens to be a black guy. He happens to have he has great ideas and also happens to be black, which I don't care about. I like the guy's demeanor, which goes against my whole I don't understand the personality thing. So I get the irony there. I like his demeanor. I like his ideas. I like where he stands on big issues. So I like the guy. But Joy Behar, in reaction to his announcement earlier this week, said something very indefensible. Watch this. I know this is probably the only time that anybody watches The View, but check this out. Watch this.
And he's one of these guys who, he's like Clarence Thomas, black Republican who believes in pulling yourself by your bootstraps, rather than, to me, understanding the systemic racism that African Americans face in this country and other minorities. He doesn't get it, neither does Clarence.
Right.
And that's why they're Republicans.
Yeah. I know.
Look at Sunny Hostin's face. If you're watching this, I don't think she liked that comment at all. A rich white lady from New York saying that these two black guys don't know what discrimination is. I don't know if that played off well, and I think Sunny looks upset, right? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Sunny's irritated by that? Yeah, I don't know, man. This is that's one of the worst things I think said on network TV. Again, not even upper class, an ultra wealthy New York white lady saying that the two black guys she's talking about, Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott, they don't know what they're talking about. The black community is suffering and they need my help. Pretty dang racist, if you ask me. And if you're wondering, why is that racist? She just doesn't agree with it. No. The soft bigotry of low expectations. I think it's the absurd bigotry or just the outright bigotry of low expectations. But that comes into full view in this particular instance. So there's that. Good old Joy Behar making, again, racist claims that Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott don't know what it's like to be black in America. Ugh. JR says they're such vile trolls. That's funny. Um, yeah. Ryan says white savior complex much? Yeah, that's a big thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Interesting that she thinks she can. Well, she's gonna get away with it. So ridiculous. I'm gonna save this public bathroom thing for tomorrow once again because I think tomorrow, Friday, more of a fun day. We'll end it there on that. Mostly because I'm running up against a hard stop. I got to go film a thing in about 4 minutes. So that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. I hope the stream was okay from a Wi-Fi standpoint. If not, you can blame Ron DeSantis for the tech problems. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your other social media accounts. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to find me there. Yeah, pretty much anywhere, Instagram, Facebook. If you watch on Rumble, if you're watching on Rumble and you see some of the comments pull up and you wonder, why isn't he pulling up any of my comments? Rumble is not yet integrated with the streaming platform that I use, so I can't see Rumble comments as in real time. So if you're watching on Rumble, bear with us. Eventually, I think that will come, but it's not quite there yet. That is why I think several people have voiced an opinion as to why we can't read Rumble comments. Sorry about that. That is coming hopefully sometime soon. Ask the Rumble guys. It's Ron DeSantis' fault. That's what it is. That's the problem. We will see you tomorrow, same time, different place from Phoenix. See you tomorrow. God bless America.